That goes high toward the wall in left field, and let's see if he got it. It's enough. Not for a home run.
What defines a great hitter? Is it a high home run count? A high on base percentage? Maybe you think it's OPS. But for some people, a great hitter is defined by their batting average. More specifically, a 300 batting average. For generations, it stood as baseball's gold standard. The mark that separated good hitters from great ones. In the pantheon of baseball's statistical achievements, batting 300 has always held a sacred place. A number that fans, players, and historians alike value as the benchmark of hitting excellence. What was once considered within reach by the game's elite is now becoming baseball's equivalent of a mythical creature. The 300 hitter isn't extinct, but they're certainly endangered. Well, before we get to the content, this is a brand new YouTube channel, so leave a like and subscribe because we are passionate in bringing you the latest MLB analysis. Now that that's out of the way, let's get right into it. Today, we're diving into the disappearance of baseball's 300 hitter. From the golden age of contact hitting to the rise of analytics, changing pitching philosophies, and the unfolding battle between offense and defense that's been waging since Abner Doubleday laid out the first diamond in Cooperstown.
Here's the pitch to Williams. Line drive, base hit.
In the second. Hit back through the middle. Hits second base. And swings and lines a base hit to right field.
But to understand the current state of baseball, we need to understand how we got here. In 1941, Ted Williams completed what many consider the greatest offensive season in baseball history, which is the last time any player has crossed the mythical 400 threshold. Meaning the last time anyone hit 400 with a minimum of 100 games played was 84 years ago. Williams famously refused to sit out the final day of the season to protect his average, instead playing both games of a doubleheader and going 6 for 8 to push his average from 399 to 406. What's even more amazing is that Williams wasn't alone in his greatness. That same season, 28 hitters batted 300 or better with a minimum of 100 games played, despite the fact that MLB had only 16 teams with much smaller rosters. The post-war era through the early 90s was a golden age for elite contact hitters. Let's consider the 1980 season. A full 45 players hit 300 or better across MLB with a minimum of 100 games played. That means 18% of players were 300 hitters. George Brett flirted with 400 that year, finishing at 390 for the Kansas City Royals. The standard wasn't just being met, it was being shattered. The 1980s and early 90s gave us batting artists like Tony Gwynn, who hit over 300 for 19 consecutive seasons, meaning he hit over 300 in 19 of his 20 seasons played, including a remarkable 394 in the strike-shortened 1994 season. Wade Boggs put together 7 straight seasons over 320, and Rod Carew won 7 batting titles with his precise, scientific approach to hitting. These weren't just great hitters, they were batting average savants who approached hitting as both art and science. Gwynn famously studied his swing on early video equipment when most players relied on feel. He understood the mechanics of hitting in ways that were way ahead of his time. Tony Gwynn once said, "The game is 90% mental. The rest I leave to my bat." For elite hitters of this era, 300 wasn't the goal. It was the expectation, the starting point. It was a different game played with a different philosophy. But while Tony Gwynn was slapping singles to the opposite field, a revolution was happening in baseball thinking, one that would forever change how we value different offensive skills. In the early 2000s, the Oakland Athletics, led by general manager Billy Beane and inspired by the works of Bill James, began to question traditional measures of offensive value. The ideas popularized in Michael Lewis's Moneyball emphasized one major point: on-base percentage matters more than batting average. The logic was simple: a walk is nearly as valuable as a single, and batting average completely ignores this important offensive skill. Players like Jason Giambi, who might hit 275 but walk 120 times in a season, were actually more valuable than 300 hitters who rarely took a base on balls. This thinking spread fast through baseball front offices. Teams began valuing patience distance and power over contact. The traditional batting average began to lose its place as baseball's top offensive statistic. But what's interesting is that this philosophical shift didn't immediately lead to a dramatic drop in the 300 hitters. In 2000, at the height of the steroid era, an incredible 70 players hit 300 or better with a minimum of 100 games. As the steroid era came to a close, of course, a natural correction occurred. But even in 2006, 56 hitters who played 100 or more games still reached the 300 mark. The true collapse was still to come, driven by forces that extended far beyond just a change in offensive philosophy.
Swing and a miss, strike three. It was 105.5 miles an hour.
In 2010, a young Cuban defector named Aroldis Chapman stepped onto a major league mound and did something that would change baseball forever. He threw a fastball 105 miles per hour. While there had always been hard throwers in baseball, Chapman represented something new, the beginning of the velocity revolution. According to Baseball America, in 2008, the average fastball was just under 92 miles per hour. By 2022, it rose to over 94. This wasn't just a few pitchers who were throwing harder. It was a change across baseball. Organizations began seeking out velocity above all else. Minor league systems installed high-tech equipment to measure and develop throwing velocity. Pitch design became a science, with teams employing physics experts to maximize spin rates and movement profiles. For hitters, the challenge was huge. Human reaction time simply doesn't improve that much with training. A 95 mile per hour fastball gives a hitter approximately 0.425 seconds to decide whether to swing and then execute that swing. And that's if they're facing a straight fastball, which became increasingly rare. The late Jose Fernandez's breaking ball moved 17 inches. That's nearly a foot and a half of late movement. Clayton Kershaw's curveball just drops off the table. Jacob deGrom could throw 100 miles per hour with pinpoint precision and then follow it up with a slider that moved in the opposite direction at 92 miles per hour. By 2019, the league-wide batting average had dropped to 252. In 2019, just 23 players who played 100 games or more hit 300 or better, and many of them barely crossed the threshold. And then came 2021, when MLB began cracking down on foreign substances that pitchers were using to increase spin rates. Now, despite this rule enforcement, only 16 hitters who played 100 games or more managed to hit 300. Keep in mind, just 20 years ago, 70 qualified hitters hit 300 or more.
Over there, Rojas and Gordon and Gonzalez and Ethier. I don't know the last time I've seen a four-man infield on the right side. Three, yes. 0-1 to Seth. One out, remember. Ground ball. The play at the plate is on a bounce for one. Back to first, not in time. And now wait 1 second.
Backhanded by Wong. Shallow right field, and he makes the play.
And while pitchers were making it harder to make contact, defenses were making it harder to find holes when you did put the ball in play. The analytical revolution didn't just change offensive thinking or pitching, it transformed defense as well. Advanced defensive metrics and spray charts allowed teams to position fielders with unmatched accuracy. The dramatic infield shift became standard, with 3 infielders positioned on one side of the infield against extreme pull hitters. A perfectly struck line drive that would have been a hit in any previous era became a routine out. Joey Gallo, one of the most shifted against hitters in baseball, faced defensive alignments that would have been considered radical just a decade earlier. During the entire 2011 season, just 4 teams repositioned their infielders on 100 or more balls in play. In 2022, over 33% of plate appearances featured an infielder in an overshift. What's more, the athletes playing defense were bigger, faster, and more skilled than ever before. You had Manny Machado making eye-popping plays at third base, Byron Buxton running down balls in the gap that seemed destined for extra bases, and Francisco Lindor ranging far to his right, spinning and throwing out runners with supernatural arm strength.
Field, long run, Renfroe and Trout. It's Trout making the running catch. Now gets that with just above the outer field. Mike Trout on his horse. He goes back. Light it up.
Mike Trout.
The combination was deadly for batting averages. Pitchers who were harder to hit, throwing nastier pitches with defensive wizards positioned perfectly behind them. And as if the deck wasn't stacked enough against high batting averages, hitters themselves began to adopt approaches that prioritized power over contact. Beginning around 2015, the launch angle revolution took hold across baseball. Hitters began intentionally changing their swing paths to hit more balls in the air, seeking the optimal launch angle of roughly 25 to 35 degrees that maximizes the chance of a home run. The poster child of this movement was Josh Donaldson, who transformed himself from a solid hitter into an MVP by adopting an uppercut swing designed to drive the ball in the air. JD Martinez rebuilt his swing around similar concepts after studying film of elite power hitters. The statistical incentives all pointed in the same direction. In a run environment where singles were harder to string together due to elite pitching and defense, the home run became king. Why hit 300 with 15 home runs when you could hit 250 with 35 home runs? The latter was simply more valuable in terms of run production. And the numbers tell the story. In 2019, the league set an all-time record with 6,776 home runs, nearly 1,200 more than were hit in 2000, a year when offense was at its peak. Today, the modern hitter is swinging harder, swinging with more elevation, and accepting strikeouts as a necessary evil in the pursuit of power. In 2010, the league-wide strikeout rate was 18.5%. By 2021, it had climbed to over 23%. Nearly 1 in 4 plate appearances ended in a strikeout. With 2 strikes, instead of choking up and protecting the plate like Tony Gwynn, modern hitters continued swinging for the fences. The 2-strike approach that had been fundamental in hitting 300 had largely disappeared from the game. On top of this, in 1956, when Ted Williams hit 345 at age 37, he faced starting pitchers who routinely threw complete games. In fact, there were well over 660 complete games in 1956. Ted Williams might see the same pitcher 4 or 5 times in a single game. In fact, when facing batters a third time through the order, Ted Williams hit 364 in 1956. This is a massive advantage for an intelligent hitter who could make adjustments. Fast forward to the modern game, and the specialization of pitching has further destroyed batting averages. Starting pitchers rarely face a lineup 3 full times. Bullpens are filled with specialists throwing max effort for a single inning. Teams carry 13 or 14 pitchers, each throwing harder and with more movement than the last. Let's look at this fun little graph. In 1971, the average start went from 6.5 to 7 innings. In 2019, it dropped below 5 innings, a huge drop off for the average starter in the MLB. So consider the journey of a typical cleanup hitter in the modern game. In his first at-bat, he faces a starter who throws 96 with a wipeout slider. In his second at-bat, he sees the same starter who's still fresh. By his third at-bat, he faces a left-handed specialist brought in specifically to stop him. But in his fourth at-bat, he faces a setup man throwing 99 with a splitter that drops off the table. Tony Gwynn famously dominated Greg Maddux, hitting .415 against the Hall of Famer over 107 at-bats and never striking out against him. But much of that success came from seeing Maddux multiple times in a game, making adjustments and exploiting patterns. The modern game rarely allows hitters for such advantages. The numbers tell a clear story. In the 2024 season, just 7 hitters who played 100 games or more managed to hit 300 or better, a tenth of the hitters who hit 300 in the year 2000. And this isn't just a matter of fewer elite contact hitters. It's a fundamental reshaping of what makes up offensive value in baseball. Modern superstars like Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, and Juan Soto are dynamic offensive forces who get much of their value from power and plate discipline rather than pure batting average. The league-wide batting average in 2024 sat at 243. That's the 7th lowest mark since 1884. The game has never been more 3-outcome oriented. Home runs, walks, and strikeouts accounted for 35% of plate appearances in 2019, but that figure rose to 36% in 2020. Now let's take a step back and focus on the defensive shift. In 2023, MLB mandated that firstly, the 4 infielders must be within the boundary of the infield when the pitcher is on the rubber. Secondly, infielders may not switch sides. In other words, a team cannot reposition its best defender on the side of the infield, the batter is more likely to hit the ball. And finally, if the infielders are not aligned properly at the time of the pitch, the offense can choose an automatic ball or the result of the play. I bring this up because not only does it affect how defense is played, but I want to talk about how it's affected the game's best remaining contact hitter. Luis Arraez hit .316 in 2022, winning his first batting title. But in 2023, after the rules were implemented, Arraez's batting average skyrocketed to .354. But the interesting part is that his B-WAR only increased by 0.5, meaning contact hitting might not be as important to winning as previously thought. So what does the decline of the 300 hitter tell us about baseball today? First, it reminds us that baseball is constantly evolving. The game has always been a battle between offense and defense, with each side developing new advantages that the other must counter. The pendulum swings back and forth, and we're currently in an era where pitching and defense have gained the upper hand. Second, it shows the power of incentives in shaping behavior. MLB players aren't hitting for lower averages because they're less skilled. They're responding simply to a game where power and patience are rewarded more than contact. A player who hits .260 with 30 home runs will typically earn more and help his team win more games than a player who hits .310 with 10 home runs. Finally, the vanishing 300 hitter reflects league-wide shifts toward optimization and specialization. Baseball has become a game of specialists. Power hitters who accept strikeouts, defensive wizards who don't need to hit, and pitchers who throw maximum effort for minimum innings. Will the 300 hitter make a comeback? There's no definitive answer, but a hitter selling out their entire at-bat for a home run might be an issue for players who can't consistently hit the long ball. Perhaps we're witnessing an evolution in how we measure and appreciate hitting excellence. Just as we no longer celebrate 20-game winners in pitching as frequently, perhaps the 300 hitter will become a statistical milestone of a different era, but also a statistic that we no longer find as important as OBP and other offensive metrics. The Tony Gwynns and Wade Boggs of baseball aren't gone. They've just been transformed into players with different profiles, optimized for a different game. They are the Juan Sotos of the world who might hit .275 but walk 130 times with a .450 on-base percentage. They're the Freddie Freemans of the world who combine 300 hitting ability with 30 homer power. As fans, we can neither moan about the passing of an era or celebrate the remarkable skills of the modern player, who must hit pitches thrown harder and with more movement than ever before, deployed by managers with unprecedented amounts of information about how to attack each hitter's weaknesses. In the end, the game doesn't get worse, it just changes and challenges us to appreciate new kinds of excellence while honoring the achievements of the past. Will we ever see another season with 40 or 50 300 hitters? Probably not. But is it impossible? Absolutely not. A player's batting average used to be the leading metric we valued offense at. Now, OBP and OPS seem to be more important. And yes, strikeout rates are way up and walk rates are overall down. But what do you think? What type of player is more valuable? A player who hits .325 with 15 home runs, but barely walks and barely strikes out? Or a player who hits .275 and 30 home runs, but walks consistently and strikes out more? Well, let me know in the comments below what you think. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more hard-hitting baseball analysis. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.